Hey everyone, Ekman here with another video, and today we've got a top 16 breakdown for the Versus Games Florida Regionals that happened this past weekend. They had over 500 players and 9 rounds of Swiss into this top 16 that we see here today. And also, this is a pretty big weekend for the One Piece card game because it's the first weekend with OP11 and the new Star Decks legal, which is just really exciting. So, a couple of things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We make a lot of One Piece content. It does help a lot. Also, if you guys want any of the deck lists, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description, and it's behind me as well. We are going to keep this up to date as much as we can with the next couple weeks of the OP11 format too. And then lastly, you might have noticed this video kind of went up and down a couple times. There are some audio issues, and there also was just some like deck list issues that I had originally in the original recording. So this is a re-recording. This is hopefully the definitive version of this video, and I'm sorry that it went again up and down so much today. But again, the website's correct. This video is going to be correct, and let's just jump on into it. So as mentioned, we did have 512 players, 9 rounds of Swiss, and of that top 16, we did have 5 copies of green purple Luffy, 5 copies of the purple and black Luffy, and then 1 of the blue and purple Luffy, 1 Newgate, 1 Buggy, 1 Reiju, 1 Yamato, and 1 Betty as well. So definitely in a purple Luffy meta, with it taking 2/3 of the top 16 here, but maybe not the purple Luffys that people are expecting, right? The purple and black Luffy did get a lot of support with the new Star Deck, so I think a lot of people have been on it as well. We also can see from the leader breakdown that the purple and blue and purple Luffy wasn't doing so well on conversion. We did see like green purple and purple and black kind of get an up conversion, and then pretty much everything else that topped was within the conversion rates kind of from there. So really interesting to see. We also do have a little bit of data right now for the Dublin regionals that happened during the same time. I'll likely make a video for this one too, but you can see this top 16, which is kind of a little bit different, right? Green purple obviously still very strong between both of them, but the fact that, you know, purple and black got a 5 top in the Florida regionals, but this wasn't in the top 16 at all in Dublin's, I think is really interesting. They also had some unique leaders like Teach and Smoker, which we can look over when we get that data a little bit too. So some of it's already on my tournament deck list table too, so you can check that out too. I'm going to continue to update this, and I think I have enough lists that even if I don't get the full 16, we'll make this page and we'll have a video out tomorrow for it. So make sure to look out for that. But for this event, we are going to go over the top placing leader for each leader that got a top, starting off with our first place list, which is going to be Akrasnic. I don't know how to pronounce that, so my apologies, but their version of the green and purple Luffy. So pretty standard list, and if I was to be as bold as to say, I think green purple Luffy was a safe pick going into this meta, just because it's a deck that's pretty much known. You don't have to make a lot of changes for it. A new deck like purple and black takes a lot of new testing, right? It's a new environment, so it's a little bit riskier to take a deck in a day one format that didn't really exist before this format. So I think, again, green purple is something that's just really strong. Is likely, I think it's not too crazy to say it was the best deck at the end of EBO2, so it's still doing very good, even without really any card changes for it. So some unique adds and changes I think for this build is that, one, we're only playing 1 single copy of the purple Luffy. This card I think is, you know, still very, very strong, wins you a lot of games, so it's interesting to see it only at 1 copy, but we do also have the other 6 cost Luffy. So this is from the Star Deck 26 for generally the purple and black Luffy, but it does get benefits for this multicolor Straw Hat Crew type leader. So this makes you an 8k leader if you use it in conjunction with your leader effect. It is kind of tricky to do effectively because you are losing a lot of Dom potentially if you don't have your Sanji puddings out, but also just being an 8k leader is very strong. We are also bumping up to 3 copies of Luffy Taro, which I'm seeing more people put like 2 to 3 copies where it was either like 0 or 2 copies before. So I think this has gone a lot better into this format specifically. And then for the rest of it, I think kind of standard stuff. So the only other thing I'll say is Tony Chopper, because we're in a format where there's a lot of decks that just naturally ramp because they're purple. Tony Chopper can be a blocker that also just gets to ramp for free as long as you're like even or behind from where you are on your opponent's Dawn, which I think is going to happen a lot more often in this format compared to where we were in EBO2. So makes a lot of sense. It's not a Straw Hat card, but as long as you play it and you block with it, you can use your leader effect the turn afterwards, and I think it's a good pick for this meta as well. So not very much more to say from that. I think green purple is still in a really good spot for this meta, and congratulations to their first place finish. finish. Next up, we've got the purple and black Luffy. So this is Luis's second place version of the deck here. And again, we did have a lot of different builds in the top 16. So not the only way to build this. This is just the only way, the only one that we're going to go over for this video. But generally speaking, I think that the new 6-drop that we just talked about, this just works really, really well for this leader, obviously, right? Being able to be a 7k leader pretty consistently throughout the rest of the game is really great for a leader like this one. You do have to kind of like balance what your Dawn -2 effects are, but you are still in a really good spot. We do have also the addition of 8-drop Katakuri, which I do think is great for not only being like a defensive tool, like not only are you 7k leader, but you also have an 8k blocker on top of it, but then you can also be like a little bit grittier with your Dawn minuses because you get that Dawn back every turn too. So I think that's something that works really well with this leader. Obviously, we've been seeing it with the blue and purple Luffy as well in that deck. I do think there's also a bit of a decision for this deck on how much blockers you're using, and also if the 9-drop super or secret rare Luffy is needed. There are decks that topped this weekend that were not playing this card, so don't think this is an automatically 2 or 3 of, but it is a decision point for there. I have also seen like stuff like the 3-drop Chopper and blocker from also start at 26 and some other tech ads. So I think this is a really good build. I think Luis really had a fantastic X1 run with this deck, but I also want to say that this is not the only way to build this. So make sure to check out the other builds if you haven't already. And I really do think that purple and black is a really strong deck in this meta. Again, even though it didn't top at all in the Dublin regionals, at least top 16, I do think that's a deck that's going to continue to see more and more play as we progress throughout this meta. So we'll see if that's true or not. And congratulations to Luis for their second place finish with the purple black Luffy. So next up, we've got the supposed boogeyman of the format is the blue and purple Monkey.D.Luffy from OP11. This is Kyle's version of the deck here, and this only got one copy into the top 16, even though it was the most played deck into this format. Only one into the top 16 is a little bit dissuading for what it looks like. So one thing I will mention is that, again, we are in a different meta from where we were in Japan at this time, right? They don't have the star decks right now, and they definitely did not have it during their OP11, so that does make a difference. I do also think that a lot of people just kind of know that this deck exists because it was doing so well in Japan for such a long time, so there is like a lot of ways to try to interact with it. But I think a lot of people have been saying, you know what, purple black blue Luffy is a good deck, but is it the best Luffy right now? And I'm starting to say that maybe it's not the best Luffy. So I do think that it is a deck that does take a lot of it's a really unique deck on how it works, and so you do have to try to be better on how the deck works and try to figure out like the best plays. I do think a lot of people are trying to target you as well, and sometimes you do just lose because you are a 6k 3 life leader and you don't just get the cards that you need. So one tech ad though that I do want to kind of talk about is the Don Quixote do Flamingo. I've been seeing this and just kind of other ways to look like the top cards of our deck. Even though we do get that from our leader effect, there's a lot of situations where either one, if you play like do Flamingo on 3, that does let you find your ramp cards such as like Bond Clay, Thunder Bagua, or Gear 2 to put on top of your deck to draw into your 5 Dawn turn. You want to be on your even curve more times than not, because that does help you not only go from 8 to 10 so you get your leader effect, but also lets you use your Katakuri on curve, which again, this is a really good card to play on curve in this game, especially if you ramp to this to be on your curve. But there also are some weird times where you're at 7 Dawn, you're like, well, I really want to play this Sanji, but I don't have the ability to do so. So being able to say, you know what, on 7 Dawn I'll play Dofi, for 4 Dawn I'll like put 4 on leader or something, I'll use it for some way, and then afterwards, even though I don't use my leader effect to do so, I don't know the top card of my deck, so my Sanji is still a viable play, which I think is very good. So all in all, I think that blue purple Luffy is very there's a lot of different ways to build it right now. There's a lot of different techs that are available to the deck, and I'm literally looking forward to seeing kind of how it develops over the next couple weeks. But here's a build from Kyle, and congratulations for their finish with the purple and blue Luffy. Next up, we've got Newgate. So this is JCM's version of the deck, and JCM just always does well with this leader, right? It's been consistent in my mind over the last couple events, right? Across formats, across years of this game, he's been able to make this leader work. So self-proclaimed, he did not play a lot in this meta. He just kind of threw this together based on his previous builds and what he thought would be good into this meta, and it ended up working. So one thing I will say is that like you are an aggressive leaning leader, which is good against decks that need setup, which are a lot of the purple Luffys. Also, the fact that you're naturally a 6k leader means that you can attack aggressively for 6k without any Dawn. So being able to play a body and attack for the same turn is generally not something you can really easily do against purple and blue Luffy. So that helps you a lot too. And I do think that, JCM is just a really good player with the deck as well. So one new add for the deck is the Frankie from OP11. This is a 2k counter, but also says your turn once per turn. When your opponent activates an event, all of your characters gain plus 2k power during this turn. So I do not know if you played this card at all or if he would keep it in. I know that he's been working on trying to update this deck as much as he can for it, but it still makes sense to me that this deck is really strong as being an aggressive deck when there's our decks that just are susceptible to 6 and 7k swings very consistently in that early game. So congratulations to JCM for their finish there. I do kind of expect him to still do well with this deck, and maybe others to kind of pick up the blade, but I think Newgate's in a good spot, and congratulations for his finish there. Next up, we've got Buggy. So this is Butta's version of the deck, and I think Buggy's been one of the highest contention leaders in this format right now. I know a lot of people who swear by it. I know a lot of people who think the deck isn't very good, and I do think it generally means that it's going to be kind of in the middle for this format. It did get a top 16 for us here in North America and one in Dublin, and I do think that's a deck that's going to consistently top throughout this format. Maybe not at the numbers that people are expecting, but it is just like a really good deck that does generally have some really kind of warping matchups, mostly due to the 7-drop Buggy, right? The fact that decks like Zoro and Betty, which I do think Betty is going to be a consistent staple into this meta, just a free win off those decks because you find your Buggy is such a strong kind of way to tackle this format, I think, in a lot of ways. So I do think there are some tough matchups for it too. I also think like Rob Lucci is really good for this deck too, because if you play against like Crocodile, if you play Croc and Mihawk or any just like removal deck, this just invalidates what your deck does because you just get such good protection in what and go like super wide at the same time. So other than that, I think there are some kind of like tech choices for what this build looks like. I think we're mostly known what this deck is looking like, and most people are kind of messing around with kind of what the events look like. So I've been kind of a late ad, but I really do support Sables in this deck. It is a 7 Warlords of the Sea and Brokeworks, which means that you are able to find it off your Mr. 3, which is really, really nice. So it's like an extra search target, but being able to return a 7 or less to your owner's hand and have a trigger to do the same thing is absurd, right? Being able to bounce back like a 7-cost Luffy after like a Merry-Go is really good. There's a lot of good 7 costs that I think just exists in this format naturally, so being able to interact with that or even being able to trigger it off your life I think is really, really good. We do also have like the Cross Guild. I think there's like a decision point if you play Sanji's Pilaf or Cross Guild. Both are very good in their own way, but I think that it's kind of a decision point of like, do you want the like additional Dawn, or do you want the additional card advantage, or do you want to be able to see your specific pieces like a little bit more consistently? So I don't think one way is like better than the other outright. It's just kind of a personal choice. And then I've seen a lot of people kind of debate if this 4-drop Buggy is good or not. I think my contention, like my kind of conclusion is that it's fine, right? You play it, you don't have to play 4 copies of it, but being able to convert it into a 6-drop Mihawk is generally worth it enough to play out the card in my mind. There are like, if you are on the even curve, you play it for 4 to go into 6-drop Mihawk if you find it, which is really nice. Or also you can play like the 8-drop Croc to then play Buggy to play Mihawk too. So all of that I think is very strong, and I think that works. And then worst case, you just discard it from one of your effects or just use it as a 1k, so it doesn't really like get stuck in your hand on one way or the other. So I think it's fine. But other than that, I do think Buggy's still going to be present for the rest of this meta, and I'm curious to see how it is going to continue to go in this format. But again, here is Butta's version. Congratulations for their top with Buggy. Next up, we've got Reiju. So this is Karrar's version of the deck here, and this deck got a lot of support from this new set, kind of like the blue half, kind of a blue package for like the blue and purple half that is Reiju as a leader. Karrar's running very little of it, but he is running some of it, right? The kind of newest card is the 4-drop Reiju. It's a 2k, which is fantastic. Also, the fact that you get to pretty much just get the card draw no matter what is really nice. It searches for a drama card, so that sometimes is what you need in these situations. Also, it doesn't care about what your Dawn amount is compared to your opponent's Dawn, so that does help in kind of a weird format where there are a lot of decks that just kind of ramp up to 10 Dawn very easily, which means that cards like your Black Maria are in a really good spot. But then there's also a lot of decks like Green Purple Luffy that can kind of be play around with what their Dawn numbers are, and if you're not careful, like you do have to be less than or equal to your opponent's Dawn a lot of the time to be able to get like a lot of your effects too. So for example, like playing up the Ichi, right? If you have to have being able to go from this into this guy, right? If you have less than equal Dawn, right? So if that doesn't happen, then you don't get that kind of effect. But again, like it also means like Chopper in some matchups is just like free ramp in a lot of situations, which is really good. I do think like fitting the Foxy Pirates package into this deck is a little bit tough to do right now because again, like we found like the new Sanji in OP10, and then like we have a couple of these new cards too, right? The Niji, which is just like a vanilla 2K, which is fine since it is very searchable. And also the Ichi, which is like just a backup copy, I think, of like the 7 cost, because again, like the fact that it's just called this is great. The fact that it's just a 7-drop 7K means that some decks really can't handle this effectively, even if there's not, with the Rush. And then we are playing 2 copies of Judge, which we can technically play out 3 bodies since we're playing Niji, Ichi, and the Reiju, though obviously the Niji is a little bit tougher to do with these numbers. But I think this is a really cool build. I think Reiju is pretty viable into this format. I think it's something that I think on like my original tier list, I put it in experimental just because I literally had not tested it enough. And I know a lot of people have been, thinking about like theory crafting it into this format. And the only rough spot for it was that like it didn't really top that much in Japan despite having a new package. So I know Karrar has been, working on this for a long time. I'm happy to see that he got rewarded for his hard work, and congratulations for his finish with Reiju. Next up, we've got Yamato. So this is Connor's version of the deck here. And Yamato is definitely a deck that I've been working on for the last little bit. I do think it's like it got some new star deck support, and I do think that's really cool. I think like the 1-drop Yamato is really, really strong for this deck, and just having like a good consistency tool for finding your Land of Wano cards is great. But I also think that there's kind of 2 different ways to build this. There's kind of like a more defend the 8-drop kid kind of fortress build, as it's been kind of called. This is what I would call like the more traditional build of Yamato, where we just kind of focus on doing a lot of double attack. We've got not only like the traditional Onami for banish, but we also do have the Izo for a way to banish as well. This also lets you get 2 Dawn onto so for example, let's say we have 4 Dawn, right? We can play Izo for 2, use the effect to put 2 on Yamato and attack 7K, and then afterwards we can get that additional 2 Dawn back onto this with the leader effect. So getting a blocker is really nice. Also, this is just weirdly good in a lot of decks that just generally go down to 3 life anyways, or even start at 3 life when it comes to blue and purple Luffy. So that is something that I think is good for Yamato as well. I do like the new Momo. I think this is a great card for kind of ending games. And also there are like some weird times where like you can't really use your leader effect effectively because of how it works, and how like the Dawn only goes on the characters, and like you can play a character but then you can't attach Dawn to your leader, where the double attack is really important. So Momo being able to like give a plus 1k to your leader if you have 2 or less life cards is great. But also like a weird thing where if you just have like, if you start your turn with just Momo and your leader, you're able to attach Dawn to your leader, unattach it with the Momo effect, and then reattach it to itself, which is with your Yamato leader effect. So you have some ways to get some really big numbers with this card, and if your opponent doesn't answer it, you get to kind of like your leader effect is like super free instead of just moderately free like it was previously. So in general, I think Yamato's in a good spot for this format. It's really cool to see it got a top in this first weekend, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it continues to go for the next couple weeks. But again, here's Connor's build. Congratulations for their finish with Yamato. And then lastly, we've got Mad's version of Belo Betty. This is also the leader that won in Dublin, so it's interesting to see it get first place in that event and then just sneak into 16th place for this event. Actually, it wasn't 16th place, right? It was a top 6. It was 14th place for it. But regardless, I do think that this is a deck that just got a lot of power, not necessarily from new cards, but just kind of what the format looks like. Again, there's a lot of decks that are just very greedy with like setting up the first couple turns or taking cards from their life, and that just makes Betty so much better at doing its aggressive play, right? Karasu also just making a 6k leader into a 5k leader means that a lot of like blue purple Luffys and other Luffy leaders are just kind of focused on like, what, I can't really I can't really afford to spend these first couple turns setting up. I need to change my game plan, because Karasu making my leader a 5k means that all these attacks that I didn't think I was going to have to deal with, I do now have to deal with, and my hand size just kind of goes away. Or blue purple Luffy just is filled with bricks a lot of the time. So I think that's something that you can definitely answer with Betty, especially since like if you're playing as a 5k leader, you have like these 8k attacks going into a 4k leader, which is tough. Even if you have like a giant, right? It's giant another card for like no real Dawn investment either. So there is like some decision points on some builds, right? I have been seeing a lot of people play either the stage. I know that like the tension hormone's been a little bit more popular because either you trigger it from life and you play something from your hand, or there are some weird turns where you can really just leave 3 Dawn open and then you get to use the effect to play out something, which is great. I also know that Dragon's a bit of a decision point too, but is a good late game kind of like Dawn sync, which is great, and you can always discard it from your leader effect. And then Koala, most people play 2 or 3 copies of this. It's just like a blocker that helps you reset the board and take a card from your life for some additional draws. So only other card that I see is some people play like the new Zeus 2K just as like a way for some removal, and it technically draws a card from your life, which Betty really needs to make sure they kind of have some card advantage at some points, because we're being super greedy with like discarding cards from our hand with our leader effect and just playing a lot of cards on the board too. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Mads for their finish with Betty. So anyways, that's going to be it. Hopefully this is the last time I have to record this video. But again, I do apologize for the delay and some of the issues with this one, but it should be definitively definitively finished for this one. And again, I'm looking forward to future events in the future too. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and we'll catch you all next time.